you have a block that's turned off that floats around. And that's what creates, you'll see it's kind of moving and shaping. And that was one or more off sections being programmed to swirl around and make it appear as if the lights were moving.
All right, I gotta say, man, Loki season 2 finale was incredible. I mean, the season 1 was already my favorite, and season 2 somehow topped it for my favorite MCU show. So, congrats to you guys.
Thank you.
What was your first reaction when you got the script and saw what was coming from this finale?
It was excitement. From the perspective of cinematographer, you're always thinking, well, how good can I make this look, or what opportunity does this provide for me to flex? And the end of episode 6 is such a big, visually spectacular set piece that it's the perfect template for a DP to build on top of. And not only that, but it is this type of set piece that's really unusual in the sense that it's not driven by conflict or confrontation, which a lot of these climactic set pieces tend to be, but it's a full-on mystical science fiction type of set piece, which I was also particularly excited by.
So then, with that drive in mind and that genre in your head, did you look to any specific prior projects, be it TV, film, art, whatever, for inspiration?
I like using references, and I used plenty of them throughout the season. In this particular case, we didn't discuss any references, and I didn't have anything in mind. I think because it's such a unique sequence, it's hard to find parallels between this and other things we've seen before in cinema, which is one of the coolest things about it. There was the biggest question was, what does the light look like after the loom explodes? You have the loom. So until the loom explodes, you're in the look that had existed prior to this throughout the season. That was established when Mobius goes out on the gangway all the way back in episode 1. And after the loom explodes, the light, that white hot orangey light, dissipates and reveals the ambient lighting that's in the space. The biggest question was, what was that lighting going to be? What was motivating it? And how much would it be moving and changing and flickering? Because we did not know what the strings were going to look like. We knew that there were strings, right? Of course, because Tom has to reach out and grab stuff. There was nothing there. We went through a long process of discussing, are we going to put, blue strings? Is SFX going to have stuff there for him to physically grasp and pull and all that? That wasn't the case. We ended up with nothing. That's full pantomime acting on Tom's behalf. Also, the stairs were a whole thing. We went through a period of testing Stairmaster type exercise machines, so we could, because we were, if he's not moving, if it's the stairs moving below him, we'd be able to just have a lot more freedom and mobility with the camera. But ultimately, yes, we went with stairs, and the stairs were a totally separate stage than the gangway. So there's two pieces to that sequence. There's the part where he walks down the gangway and then steps onto the steps, which was still shot on the gangway set. And then there was the ascending the steps and sitting on the throne, which took place on another stage. And that was all. It was blue steps, blue platform, blue seat. Everything was blue. There's absolutely nothing in that environment on set that day other than blue. And the lighting was, I wanted it to feel as emotional and spiritual as possible, because he is, in some ways, that character is ascending to another level of spirituality. He's giving up Loki as an individual, Loki who has his own agenda, and he's sacrificing himself to be Loki the god who ties all of the timelines together forever from now on. And he, in a sense, he's dying, he's giving up the old Loki entirely. And so when we were thinking about what that scene should look like in terms of the lighting, it came down to that question of what's the emotional tone of the scene. And we don't know if Loki's going to come back or not in the future. I can't tell you that. But he may. But I think whether he does or not, this is the end of his journey as that character that we saw in the original Thor film. He's now arced fully from being, selfish, conniving, manipulative, evil person who is only trying to seize power and make his own situation better, to now someone who is a full-on good guy. He has genuine friends, and he's in love, and he has finally found who he really is deep down inside, this wonderful person. And now he has to give it all up to save everyone that he loves and save the universe. And I think this is the end of that journey for him, which is no matter what he goes on to do, that this is going to be Loki's story. So in a lot of ways, I thought of it as saying goodbye to his character. And that scene is about his character saying goodbye to those people, that look back over his shoulder, and him meeting his fate. So it was important to me that the light felt heavenly, but in a sorrowful way. And, when you say how you achieved something specifically, technically, it never quite does justice to the intent behind it. But to me, that meant white light that was really soft and on the cooler side, but without veering it all into blue. I wanted to try to achieve like really white, heavenly white type of feel, without any of the warmth of the loom or coolness. And we, it was relatively simple to do. It was soft boxes. There were a lot of soft boxes over. They're actually behind the scenes photos that I'll be sharing soon of what the lighting rig was on that whole gangway set outside of the core. I also have photos I can share of the stairs that he ascends and the lighting set up there. But in both cases, it was overhead soft boxes. We had one 40 by 40 on the throne set. It was a 40 by 40 soft box ringed with 20 by or 12 by 40 letter boxes that we used to dig light in more from the sides, and some boxes in the corners as well. And then on the gangway, it's much, much bigger. It was 4 soft boxes overhead that were all fairly enormous. They were probably more like 4 20 by 40 soft boxes. And then we used that light that we had been using to create the light of the loom also for this ambient heavenly glow effect. That was not a softbox, actually. It didn't have any diffusion on it. It was just a bunch of Vortex 8s in an array, raw. There was one centered at the end of the gangway that was the primary one that we used for that sequence. I believe it was about 6 by 6 vortexes, although it could have been 4 by 6 or something like that. And that we worked to develop a cue where it felt like that heavenly light, there was a shadow. The way it is it's they're all on, and then if you want to get it to feel like it's moving, you program them turning off in a pattern. It's not about this section that's on rotating around. It's they're on, and then you have a block that's turned off that floats around. And that's what creates, you'll see it's kind of moving and shaping. And that was one or more off sections being programmed to swirl around and make it appear as if the lights were moving. And the idea there was that the strings would be passing in front of whatever lights, fake light source was up there.
I love all of that. It all culminates so well to create this truly emotional sequence. And I'm actually curious to know how much color played into that as well, because I mean, Loki's, green motif plays throughout that whole sequence. I know I'm sure a lot of that came from VFX, but I'm curious if that factored into your work at all as well, of making sure you had the right hue of green to really, give him a happy send off more than just a sad send off.
That green I am obsessed with. I love the way that green looks. I don't know what it does. I think it like ties back to something I saw in childhood or something, because whenever I see that Loki green color, I just I can't get enough of it. Unfortunately for me, uh, none of it in the entire season was ever created on set. Like I never got to light anything green. At one point, when Loki throws the robber baron down the alley in episode 203,
Mhm.
1993, we shot, I turned a light green for a VFX reference plate, and someone walked through frame holding it, just showing what it would look like if Loki's like green energy was moving through space and illuminating this dark alley that we were shooting down. That was the only time I got to do any green, and it was for a VFX plate. But no, it's amazing knowing that there wasn't any green on set, seeing all of that green in the final images, is achieved with VFX and color in the grade. Um, we didn't even know, for example, that the strings were gonna get his green energy. Like for a while, the idea was that the strings would be super physical and he was pulling the strings, but we didn't really discuss that like pulse of green energy that happens when he grabs the strings. Makes a lot of sense, but it wasn't in the previs and it wasn't discussed. And there was also no indication at that time that there would be a green chasm that he would ascend into. It was just when we shot the sequence, the idea was that those steps at the end of the gangway just went up, and then he just went up them to the throne, which they were kind of forming, and you could do some VFX of stuff coming together, but there was no, the way it is now where he like goes up the steps into this chasm and then it seals up behind him. That was not in our previses. It was not in any of our discussions, and it was not what we were planning for when we shot it. So all that's actually relatively new to me. Although it's super cool. I'm glad they did that. It's really, really awesome. But all that green light you see coming out of the chasm or whatever you want to call it when he like looks back and stuff. Yeah, I had no idea that was going to be there.
That's incredible then, because I mean, I feel like the lighting, they figured out a way to utilize your lighting so well to make that scene pop and those colors pop. So
Yeah.
that's great. Another sequence in that episode I wanted to highlight was He Who Remains His Return. I talked about it with Aaron and Justin. I mean, it feels like such a totally different atmosphere than the season 1 finale in which he appears. The room feels much warmer in lighting, and the camera work feels very intimate and deliberate on the actors. What was the thought process, the creative process there, and putting that together when looking at the season 1 finale in comparison?
I'm glad you brought that up. That was one of the first things I thought of when I was realizing how different the look of the second season would be from the first season, because what was happening in that room, He Who Remains office in the Citadel at the end of time in season 1, was just so counter to all of the stylistic changes that we were making in season 2. It was like, whoa, like if we stick by the rules that we're outlining here, what do we do about that scene? Because we knew we were going to revisit it, and it's like the opposite of everything that we did this year. So when I say that, I mean it was saturated and colorful with shifting colorful lighting. There was purple, green, and blue basically in that sequence, and we I deliberately removed all colorful lighting from the show. And I'm very serious about sticking to, the rules. And so I brought it up right away with, you know, Justin and Aaron and Kevin Wright, the executive producer. And I showed them, I did a breakdown of like, I actually took stills from that scene in the first season and I laid them in one column. And then I duplicated those stills and I colored them in Adobe Lightroom and took out all of that color. And then I laid them in the next column. And I presented this to everyone and I said, heads up, like this is according to what we've been saying we're going to do. That's the way when we revisit the Citadel at the end of time, this is how it's going to look now. Is everyone okay with that? And I just got yeses across the board. It was like, yeah, great. I don't think it has to match the first season for whatever reason. Nothing we did, nothing matched the first season. So I was like, all right, well, let's take that and run with it. And so when we realized that there wasn't going to be that colorful lighting, we had to find another key light because that colorful lighting really was the key light. If you look at most of those shots, like the light that those characters are receiving is that light. The fireplace is there in the first season, but it's played more as just environmental depth lighting and an edge light. And then sometimes as a very muted key light. And what we loved the idea of the firelight because we felt that side that could motivate really dramatic side lighting. And it's a dramatic scene where choices are being made. It's this binary thing. It's like kill he who remains or do not, And so we opted to really play up the firelight, which actually resulted in us doing something that we never ever did. Because that other than this, that fire that does not give you the light that you need at all, not by a long shot. And so we actually had to put lights on set to emulate the fire. Those lights, it was tungsten lights. It was soft, two tungsten, two 2Ks, I believe, with soft boxes on front, roughly 4x4. So two 4x4 soft boxes on stands. And each of those had a ring of bare bulbs around it. I was looking at the BTS stills from Skyfall, that famous Roger Deakins sequence where Bond is running away from the burning house.
Yes,
He
yeah.
was using a ring light with bare bulbs on it to kind of extend that fire and run with Daniel Craig and wrap the fire around the front a little bit. And I was like, let's do that, So we put two of those rings around the soft boxes on separate stands. So the rings and the boxes were separate. We have two of each. And we would just juggle those around wherever we could. And you see in that sequence, it's not entirely consistent. And we had to do a lot of work in the grade because the way that we shoot with the wide lens, handheld, and the camera's moving everywhere, it's really hard to hide lights, which is why we never did it. This was the only significant sequence in the entire season where we put lights on the floor of the set. And normally Justin and Aaron, they're the ones that are really driving the like no lights on the set, light 360, camera goes everywhere approach. But they themselves really loved the firelight idea so much that in this case they were willing to have an exception. It wasn't something I had to sell at all. They were just like, we want the firelight, do whatever it takes. And I'm like, all right, well, this is what's going to take, that looked so good, by the way. And they were both gelled with CTO. At least the boxes were. I think the ring lights, we just played low enough. When you dim tungsten, it gets really warm. So, and the rings just helped give it, all those bulbs were individually programmed. And so they were like flickering kind of all around the ring at different places. And it really gives it that organic feel. I feel like that firelight looks outstanding. And we had a lot of ambient overhead light that was, because we still needed to motivate light because outside the whole ceiling is a skylight, right? It's a glass ceiling and you can see all the timelines out there that are the timelines themselves are what motivated the lighting in that first season, right? It's purple, blue, and green colors out there. But the thing is, they were at enough of a distance that actually the lighting she did in the first season, Autumn Doral Darker was really cool, but it was totally unrealistic for what would really be happening. You know, at that distance and those big soft sources that are out there, all of that light, it just combines together to create one color. And it would just be like a generically cool tone, you know? Because the purple and the green and the blue, they all offset each other. They all like combine to like obliterate each other's personalities, basically. And they just amalgamate into this cool tone. So that's what we were going for there. The light coming from above is cool, but it doesn't change color. And it's much dimmer than the first season in order to let that firelight play really strong and cast a deep shadow side.
I love that you took that approach because, I mean, like I said, it really just puts you in that sequence all the further, and it really grips you with the actors' performances. Another sequence I wanted to highlight was the montage of them looping. Oh, am I freezing for you?
Oh no.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I saw my internet connection was unstable. I was like, oh. Yeah, the sequence of them looping and or at least Tom Hiddleston looping and everybody recreating everything. What was that like for you trying to find different ways to, recreate each event that felt different as the montage went on?
That's a lot of fun. It's kind of, to a certain degree, it's on Tom. What we did. So we actually shot that sequence. We used Steadicam, which was rare for us, just for that like piece where he keeps resetting. The rest of that whole sequence is handheld. But in that piece, we had our A camera operator, Andrew Fletcher. He put on his Steadicam, and the guys, Justin and Aaron, just told Andrew and Tom, like, have fun with it, basically. We're in this loop, we're resetting, and they just asked Tom, just give us different bits. Follow Andrew around, follow the camera around, because you'll notice he's always like the same shot size.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like a jump cutty. They told Andrew, just wander all around the space, make S's, just do whatever. And they told Tom, follow Andrew and just jump around to different parts of the scene, do them multiple times and have fun with it, and act as if, it's keeps happening and you're getting exasperated and all that. And it worked beautifully. And we shot that all in one or two takes. But that was basically all one setup with one or two takes. I mean, in my recollection, it was a single take. It could have been two, but it was basically just them doing that for 5-10 minutes straight. And then at a certain point, the guy's like, you know what? We got enough pieces. Let's call it.
So was there a lot of rehearsal then to get it in one or two takes, or was it just pretty much all ready to go?
Well, we always do a decent amount of rehearsal. There's actually a lot of time spent on rehearsal for every shot. So like that shot in particular, no, it wouldn't have been more rehearsal than usual. But yeah, we definitely rehearsed it quite a bit.
It's executed so well. I can't imagine you guys doing it any other way. Before I let you go for my final question, the other scene I wanted to highlight was Mobius's ending. It is such another heartwarming and heartbreaking thing at the same time, where he's trying to figure out what his next steps are. And I love that as far as lighting goes, you don't really know what time of day it is. It could be the sun is setting. It could be the sun is rising. It feels so in between there with the sun on him and Sylvie next to him. What was it like, finding that out? Can you walk me through that process of creating that lighting and that shot?
Shooting day exteriors is always the most high pressure scenario for a lot of cinematographers. I mean, it's easy in the sense that it's just the light's already there, but it's hard in the sense that your project is supposed to have a very particular look and you're not in control at all of what the sun's doing when you shoot the scene. It could be overcast, could be sunny. You might be running behind. You might be ahead. You might start shooting the sequence hours earlier than you thought or hours later than you planned. You're really out of control in that type of situation. So I'm going to be really honest here, knowing that I think that was scripted in the draft we shot as the last scene. There's some stuff you see after that was like,
Mm-hmm.
Added and taken from other parts. But that's actually the last real scene in the show, right? That scene between Mobius and Sylvie with dialogue and all that. And Knowing that it was a day exterior was very concerning to me. It was like, guys, like the last scene of the season is a day exterior. You understand that I have no control over what happens, right? We're just really rolling the dice here with this scene. And but it just felt right to everyone. I tried to push back, but it really felt right. And they turned out to be right, by the way. I'm glad we shot it as day exterior. But we we did what you usually do when you have an important day exterior, which was asked to schedule it at the end of the day so the light's as pretty as possible. Generally the lower the sun gets, the more it cuts through trees and stuff and creates shadows, and it gets warmer and more golden, and it comes in a way that hits people's faces and eyes in a more flattering way than when it's higher. um so we asked to schedule it near the end of the day, and and then the rest of it was just kind of up to fate. It turned out really well, and we were very smart about which shots we shot in which order. Because you can kind of see the sun's going to be behind that. It's going to be here at this point, and this point a little bit later on. So we'll do the. We really worked with it on the day. Um, although that shot of him looking straight on at the house with the sky behind him, that was totally lit. The sun wasn't hitting his face. That's an HMI through diffusion, which I almost never do. I take pride on never lighting anything outside. But in this case, we really had to. You needed that sunlight on his face there, right? Aside from that shot, every other shot is natural sunlight, totally natural, like raw, like no diffusion, nothing bouncing around. Like aside from that front on close up of Mobius with the blue sky, every single shot totally au natural. And um the thing that was the scariest was just that last shot, the last shot we shot that day, and the last shot in the sequence, I believe, is that shot from behind him looking at the house, where the house is out of focus in the background. And it's just super poetic and beautiful and like has the perfect light. So that shot, the crew hustled faster than they did the entire shoot. Like this crew, there's 300 people on the crew. We're shooting a Marvel production. We're not like that type of like loose, snappy run and gun style outfit at all. We are a fucking like army battalion, and moving is a serious endeavor. The amount of people and equipment that need to move to open up something that was previously occupied. But this crew, they understood what we were trying to do, and it just it was, people were like actually hustling for like the first and only time for 90 days to get that shot. And we got it.
You truly did, and it looks beautiful, and it just resonates so well with Mobius's potential happy ending or lead off into his next chapter, whatever it may be. And I just wanted to say again, congrats to you and your team, man. You guys did a phenomenal job this entire season, and I really cannot wait to hopefully see you in more Marvel stuff in the future. If not, just general projects. You've put me onto your work, and I look forward to seeing what comes next. So Isaac, thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Thanks, Grant.